guys, welcome to the very first podcast for ADHD Ireland, hosted by me, Lauren McBride, or Her Thoughts in Bright Colours on Instagram. I hope we're all well. Over the course of this podcast, we're going to discuss all aspects of ADHD in an honest way, as we have lived with ADHD our whole lives. Some of us were diagnosed sooner than later, and some of us aren't diagnosed formally at all. This gives a wide variety of experiences from all different perspectives. Please listen at your own discretion, as we are coming from a place of personal experiences. Some topics may be sensitive to listeners, so please be advised that our opinions and lives may not directly correlate with your experiences living with ADHD. During these podcasts, people living with ADHD or who have experience with ADHD in their familial, platonic or romantic relationships will be joining me over Zoom. Thank you to everyone who is and will be involved. We couldn't do it without you. I'm super excited to be hosting this podcast. Thank you to ADHD Ireland for giving me the opportunity to do something that I love. And with that, let's chat. Hello and welcome to the second podcast for ADHD Ireland Let's Chat. So today we're going to be discussing the stigma behind medication taking for people with ADHD, and this is something very close to my heart, so hopefully you guys will enjoy it. Please listen at your own discretion, as this does involve the personal opinions of people with ADHD and their lived experiences. So if it's something that you wouldn't be comfortable listening to, please don't. And today I have Joy and I have Thomas again with me today. So thank you guys so much for coming on. I hope you're well. It's very gloomy weather outside, but hopefully you guys had an okay day anyway. That's the topic we're going to cover today. And I have a bit to talk about actually, and I know you guys may have prepared and done some research beforehand of what we're going to talk about, so that's great. But the kind of thing that spun this topic for me and made me want to talk about it as a whole was I was watching, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the cartoon show Big Mouth on Netflix. Mm-hmm. So maybe if you guys have watched it, or if you haven't, there's an episode about Ritalin or Adderall. And it was quite recent, so it's socially relevant, and it's to do with one of the characters, Jay. He's got ADHD and he gets prescribed medication, and then he doesn't think he needs it, so he sells it to his friends, and they use it recreationally, and it's quite stigmatized in the show, because I feel like it's made to seem that people with ADHD don't need it, and that we would throw it to people and they'd use it recreationally and it would be quite an addictive drug. So they use it to study for exams and they end up getting quite addicted, and they have the come down afterwards. But I feel like for people who actually do have ADHD, especially adults, we do use it properly and it does benefit us in a lot of ways. So I was wondering what you guys thought about that, if you'd seen it or if you have any strong feelings about it and its depiction about us.
I haven't seen that episode, but I've definitely seen it depicted that way.
Yeah.
Just in TV and stuff like that before. And it probably was one of my concerns as well before I got formally diagnosed and realized that, I mean, I'm pro kind of medicine if there's medicine, but it's definitely like oh my gosh, I'm going to be on meth is what you think. So yeah,
it says that they're like, oh, it's only 2 compounds away from meth, and that's just a really awful depiction of what we're taking. You know, like, it helps us, maybe it doesn't help the neurotypical person, maybe it does make them feel elated and high in a sense, but you know, you're right, we're not pro medicine, but at least when we're taking it for ourselves, we're definitely pro recovery in a way, pro helping ease our symptoms.
Yeah, I'm very happy that it's available and that I have a doctor that is relatively a specialist in ADHD and is pro medication, because like I think I said in the previous episode, I don't think I'd have a job if I didn't have, like, it's not a case of how do I feel about it. It's like a necessary thing that I need to function.
Exactly. And Thomas, how about you? What do you feel either about the episode or maybe the depiction of stigma in society for ADHD medication?
For really discuss this topic, I think first and foremost we need to discuss what actually the medication does with us and why is it stigmatized in the first place. So many people don't know that how come that people with ADHD taking, who are actually very, very fast track. Their brain is always 120 miles an hour. They take in stimulants, which making the person very alert and even more hyper. And they take in it. And up until I started to learn about it, I didn't know myself. And I was worried about medication quite a lot. I am absolutely a kind of pro-medication person. So when there's a sickness, I recommend people taking medication and so on and so forth. I'm not really believers of these new age fix you through your chakras and homeopathy and stuff like that. So it's nothing like that. It just, I didn't understand the concept itself. So what is happening in the brain, especially an ADHD brain, when you take these medications? Everybody knows how it affects a neurotypical person or an average person. In ADHD brain, it's kind of opposite of the effect, because what these medicines, these compounds, in our case, for example, amphetamine in case of Adderall, or methylphenidate in the Ritalin, it's basically opens up in the brain channels to release more dopamine, but at the same time blocking them to be absorbed again. So basically the dopamine, which we are so deprived of as people with ADHD, is actually constantly have a flow of dopamine in our brains. So while the effect on an average person who has this normal level of dopamine flood in their brain, they get overflown and they have becoming in this heightened state when they are so there and they are so focused and they're going on to the highest of high level, and they are very productive, and that's why they call it the smart drug. But we ADHDers are absolutely not like this. We are getting that extra dopamine and we become actually on a normal level. So it doesn't work in our brain, chemically speaking, as it works in an average person.
Exactly.
So knowing this, when I met with these type of reaction, that why I'm taking a drug which is making you high and it does. So the thing is, why I'm bringing up this to understand this, because many of these attacks against and stigmas against these drugs are because of ignorance, basically. And when people don't know what they are talking about, anything can be explained away. The second thing I'd like to point out before I actually talking about the actual stigma and what I think about it is that this is primarily an American problem radiated out to other countries. So there was a huge overuse, abuse, and over prescription of these medications, pretending to have ADHD in many countries. And this caused a very, very high level of overuse of medication. And it's a very competitive environment. The people are constantly pressured to produce and being the best of themselves, which we all know it cannot happen all the time. And that caused an overuse. And there's an actual problem in the US, I think, which is pointed out in many documentaries and discussion about this, which is a real and a problem with basis. But at the same time, as you said it in the story, I haven't seen it, but I think I know where it came from this hysteria that this is an addictive drug, we're feeding with our children, with la 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 la. It was just depicting in a humorous way. And I think these two societal problems and the chemical thing with that people don't know what it actually does in the brain, causing this stigma and this misunderstanding ADHD medication. So when we talk about, for example, Adderall, or we're talking about Ritalin, or in my personal choice of drug is Concerta, which is basically the like Ritalin, just a long release version of it, is giving us the level field. It doesn't give us extra smartness. We don't become smarter because of it. We don't become heightenedly awake. I wish, yeah. It just makes us not making the mistakes, not forgetting things, not doing the things what would we normally without it. We do. And
well, sometimes I still do them. Sometimes I still have days where my symptoms are a bit worse, or weeks like this week, but there's a huge like objective difference that my friends and family can see. Even like colleagues can see the difference, like compared to before I was treated. It's definitely not the same as just taking a stimulant on the street, because I mean there are other medications used for ADHD, but the gold standard are the stimulant classes that you described. And it's also like it's very specific is the other thing. Like people can respond very specifically to either methylphenidate, or I'm on lisdexamfetamine, which is the other one. Yeah. And like there's certain amount of people that will only respond to one or the other. Some will respond to both. Some don't respond at all. But then the dose is very specific. Like I was actually on too high of a dose until recently.
Me too.
Yeah, and it's funny, there was no effect on my cognitive abilities. I didn't get more efficient. Like if anything, I got just like, my blood pressure was a bit high, and I could literally take it in the morning and use it as my alarm clock an hour beforehand, because it would wake me up straight away.
I was the same.
Yes. On one hand, like bad, but on the other hand, really, really great if you're not a morning person, but not the way it's supposed to be. So now I'm on the right dose, came down just a bit.
Exactly. So like people do assume once they've tried one medication that one size fits all, or one dosage, and then often they'd come off it and have bad views about it. And obviously medication isn't for everyone, but to try one medication at one dose and then to come off it completely and say you'll never try one again because all medications don't work, it's quite a broad statement to have, to kind of think that all of them, because like you said, there's so many different medications, not too many, but there's a good few, and they do different things for different people. I've never tried anything other than Listex. And like you, I was on a very high dose, and it used to wake me up like that in the morning. Now the dose I'm on, it does wake me up in terms of before I take it. Listex kind of does, your 12-hour, your 14-hour. So before I take it, like, don't talk to me. Like, I just so grumpy. My head is fried. I'm almost down, because I used to always be down before I took this medication, and then my brain can function. I can focus somewhat. Of course, it's not a fixer for everything, but it's definitely extremely beneficial. Within the first week or so of taking it, I think I said this last podcast, I was like, wow, this is what it's meant to be like. And then it does wear down over time of how kind of focused it makes you, but you kind of taper off into like a more stable version of yourself when you're using it. And I don't know where I'd be today. Like, I can work and do college at the same time. Maybe not everyone could do that, and it is a huge load on me, but I could have never imagined doing anything like that before I took it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just thrown out there. I mean, it's been approved, and the US, it's kind of has been overprescribed, but also they tend to be a bit more conservative with certain types of drugs, even if they're therapeutic. So there's kind of...
You can say its name if you want.
Well, I'm thinking of all drugs. Like in the States, they're much more conservative, like psilocybin and all these other psychoactive drugs that have therapeutic kind of effects on the nervous system. They're slowly starting to let them be studied, but I don't think in the US at all, actually.
We're pretty good for it here, in all fairness.
Yeah, there's some cool studies on that side, but it's just like a general interpretation of it rather than an understanding, I think, of what it does. But the thing is that like this kind of misinformation causes real harm. People who need access to treatment.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, for me, like I said, I'm very lucky. My doctor is is very much of the opinion that like this changes people's lives once they have the diagnosis. But I don't know where I'd be if that wasn't the case. And that kind of does trickle in even to healthcare professionals, this negative interpretation. So it's worrying. Like it's not a like fix all. I think you need some other skill, like you need to develop other skills and other areas of your life too. But it's very harmful, this stigma.
I'm a big advocate with it. Sorry, go on.
No, I just wanted to add that we tend to forget that in Ireland, in specifically, but in many of the European countries are the same. If they have any ADHD assessment, that the psychiatrists are especially careful to diagnose ADHD. I was incredibly lucky because my psychiatrist is started with very small doses, and every 2 weeks we get a feedback talk about what did I went through, what was the effect, what side effect I had, and so on forth. And I went through 3 or 4 medicine before I actually ended up what I had. And I overdosed that one. So I went up to one of the highest level because I said, I think this one is not enough, which I'm currently in. Because I said, I think I could use a little bit of more because I feel it's not enough. So he gave me the next level. And after 1 or 2 days of use, both me and my wife said, no, this is too much for me. I was buzzed. I was constantly hyper-focused. I couldn't switch task. It was so overwhelming and so uncomfortable to have it that I asked him that this is too much. I cannot take it. And he said, okay, I could go back to the original one.
I did the same. I said to my doctor, I said, I think this might be actually too much.
Yeah, it happens.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, and what I wanted to say with that it shows, the approach shows that maybe in America they overprescribing and there's a real concern there. But here in Europe, especially my experience in Ireland, is that the doctors are not just, nilly-willy sign any kind of prescription because you ask for it. It's if you don't have a legit reason, they want to prove it. So for a very long time, I have a condition which causes very high blood pressure. My psychiatrist was constantly concerned about my high blood pressure. And I went to cardiologist and I literally had to prove to him that I able to take the medicine. He wouldn't willing to give it to me. So this is another information everybody has to consider, that compared to America, where you go into the doctor, you said, I want to take this medicine, and they sign it for you. If they not, you are lucky. But many of them just without a question, they sign it. Here, you can beg your life to them, but they still not sign it unless they are absolutely certain you need it. So it's much more controlled.
Yeah, there's a big assessment, I'm aware, for ADHD in Ireland. And I know a couple of people who are unsuccessful in getting a diagnosis or medication for it, even though maybe they're like the epitome, like the clear version of ADHD that people consider in their minds when they first hear it. But the psychiatric doctors, they can be reluctant to prescribe it if you go looking for it as well, which, like you said, it's quite different than the US, because they won't just sign it for you unless they're quite adamant. Like, I went in for something else, like I mentioned last podcast, and they ended up noticing it in me, and only then was I able to get the medication. I feel like it might have been different for me if I had gone, educated myself and sought out the diagnosis and asked for the medication. So that is something that can be quite difficult for people, I guess, who are looking for the medication, because although they are reluctant to diagnose unless they're sure, some people know themselves very well, and it can actually be hard for them because maybe the psychiatrists do notice the stigma and they're a bit reluctant to prescribe because of it.
I think they can filter in for sure. I mean, I've heard stories of people being told within the UK and Ireland things like they can't have ADHD if they're an adult, or did you say that somebody told you medication wears off over time, or your symptoms go away over time?
I was told that, and I was told that within a year or two I'm going to actually be taken off my medication, regardless of how well we've seen me do with it. And one of the people that I go see, obviously I won't name, but they're adamant that it's not something that should be taken for life, which is quite scary because the improvements I've seen in myself, it's not like I'm hyper focused, but I'm just more there than I used to be. Less disassociation, less tiredness, just less emotional tiredness in a way. And it is scary that maybe the fact that pill pushing is kind of a word that's used in households in Ireland, you know, towards medication and professionals in the field, that maybe they are reluctant to keep people on medications or to kind of admit that there is people who might need medication for an extended period of time, if not for life.
I think there's a large dose in Ireland, especially in the medical community, which stems from ignorance, because they're quite happy to give you all the beta blockers, all the other prescribed antibiotics, especially. They're happy to give it to you. There's no restraint whatsoever. I think it's more of a adults ADHD. Oh no, that's not gonna fly. I don't believe it even exists sometimes, and they simply just treat it like this guy just wanna get high, or this girl is just wanna get a little bit more focus on their studies or something. And they didn't even accept the basic fact that we have this condition. Basically, they negate that you actually need this. You just literally want a legal way, maybe get the American trend and negate try to get a legal drug for yourself to get high. And many of them, I was incredibly lucky again with my psychiatrist and my doctors, because I never met with these type of stories. I never really experienced this kind of dismissal. But I have to say that I really liked in my psychiatrist's professional approach that unless he's 100% sure it's safe for me, he won't give it to me.
Yes. Yeah.
And he was very adamant to keep everything, the dose, the type of medicine, and everything which is right for me. And he was very, very adamant to say that, listen, if you feel something which you shouldn't feel, or you feel it's a little bit too buzzy, and if you feel your side effects are too strong, let me know, because we have to adjust or change the medication. Yeah. So he wasn't handle the situation from the ignorant point of view. I think he is quite good assessing ADHD itself. He instantly saw in me, and I didn't really had to struggle to prove it to him that I have it. And it was a good experience for me from that specific psychiatrist. And I'm really happy that I went to him and he diagnosed me and he treats me in this sense.
That's important, though, is to recognize that, I mean, there are standards in Ireland. If you have been assessed and you have a diagnosis of ADHD, I mean, there are prescribing standards in Ireland or in any country, but you have every right to go to change doctors if you have a diagnosis, and they've changed how it's happening now in terms of public assessment. It's now all being done through a centre, or at least hopefully soon through a centralised ADHD assessment team, and I guess to kind of standardise how people are assessed and treated. But if you have a diagnosis and you can't get prescribed the first line treatment, like, you have every right to go to another doctor or make a complaint. I mean, a doctor, I mean, it's a controlled substance, so there's extra kind of hoops and obligations that the doctor has to go through and be willing to stand by if they're going to be prescribing stimulants. But I mean, if they don't want to, you have every right to find somebody who will give you the gold standard of care. I think that's really important, because sometimes if you don't know, you can just take, like, the good old days where the doctor's word went. Like, it's not necessarily like that anymore, thankfully. And I mean, I'm lucky I had a clinical psychologist assessment privately, which I paid for myself. But like I said, 15 pages of evidence about why I have it. So hard to argue with, but also hard to get sometimes too. But,
I was going to say, we need to consider how lucky we are in a way that we have had good experiences with our psychiatrists and psychologists. because I know, again, to reiterate, like a good few people who didn't have that experience, who could only be referred by their GP to, or for anyone who's not from Ireland, just their regular doctor. They weren't able to be referred to a psychologist or psychiatrist that wasn't hundreds of euro, if not thousands. And also,
mine is private. I pay privately for my care.
Okay, so I'm assuming that was a hefty paycheck out of your bank account then.
It's $150 a month just to speak to my doctor to get my
exactly. So this is the thing, we're lucky that we can, although it may be are you okay there?
Just realized that and then there's the price of the medication as well.
It's great. It's so much money. It's lovely.
It's
but
great.
Where we have to recognize our privilege in a way, even though we hate how much it is and stuff. There's people who literally cannot afford or cannot find the right psychologist, psychiatrist, but also can't afford to change doctors. And they mightn't be allowed if they're going, like, for instance, I go to a hospital actually to get mine from a psychiatrist there, a mental health hospital, and I don't think it would fly if I was to try and change doctors. And I've been told as well that if I was to try and change doctors, that they mightn't give me the same diagnosis. And that is very scary.
I've heard this too because of this new initiative. Like, I tried to get an assessment privately. I was publicly. You have to go to your GP for anything, obviously, for a referral. I never heard anything back from my local mental health unit. I was explicitly told when I went for my private assessment that they very likely will ignore this. So I was also given the name of the private psychiatrist who I see. And I'm so grateful that I was able to have that extra option to go to.
It shouldn't be denied to us once we have a diagnosis. And it shouldn't be difficult to file it in a pharmacy either. I know it's a controlled substance, but I have had so many issues with various pharmacies over filing it. And sometimes I was without medication for a week because they may have, in conversating or in sending over faxes to each other, it might have got lost, it might have got mistyped, and I could be without medication. And people say there's no withdrawals for some of them, but there is, because we come back down to a place that we used to be mentally and physically, because it's beneficial. It doesn't make us hyper high or anything, but going back to that person you used to be, once you come off it, it's quite a quick transition.
It's not a good place to be.
No.
I cannot even say a word because I feel lucky, because even my pharmacy is treating me quite nicely and I never had an issue.
Yeah, that's really good.
Mine is good too. Mine is good, I have to say. There's just been a few instances where the hard copy didn't arrive or something that.
One of them even said, because for a time I tried to get gonfasin, which is a non-stimulant medication for ADHD, but he said, sorry, it's not approved in Ireland, so we can get it from Britain, but you have to pay for it. And it was very, very expensive. So I said, listen, I cannot afford this. I need to go for some other direction. And I said to the psychiatrist, and they said, no problem, we'll look into something which is easily accessible for you, because we don't want you to take in the medicine and suddenly stop and falling back where you were. So it was exactly his concern too.
Yeah. They definitely try to take care of you as much in that aspect.
Yeah, just the other thing which you talked about earlier, that many people don't have an option to change the doctors. When I went down to my GP first time, she said she's more than happy to do anything for me to find out do I have ADHD or not. But the problem is she doesn't know anybody who would do that, which is the biggest issue in Ireland. Is basically, unless you are living somewhere in the city center in Dublin, you have no easy access to psychiatrists at all.
And that's where I am. I'm around the corner from maybe a 10-minute walk from the Mater. I was referred there. My doctor didn't know either. It was the psychologist who assessed me and gave me the diagnosis. She said, you need to get your GP to contact the Mater, mental health unit, or adults, whatever. And then here is also a private one, because they probably won't get back to you.
This is the thing; it can be so.
They know that this won't gonna fly, because my doctor said exactly the same. I said I can refer you to a psychiatrist, but don't expect anything to happen because they are simply not equipped. They don't have the knowledge, they don't have the background, they don't have the tests. Even the children is very clunky because I have two children with ADHD. One of them, after 2 years, got an invite for a test, which will be a month later. I think it's called QB test. And we waited 2 years without even a word from them. And I constantly hounding them and constantly call them. And I just gave up because I said, no, this won't gonna, when we get enough money, we will bring her a proper assessment. Because that was the attitude everywhere. Don't expect them to call you back. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I was very lucky. My actual assessment was as a private. It cost like €600. And I mean, I couldn't have given that money over quick enough because I knew that even if she said, right, you actually don't have it, at least I would have known.
Clarity.
Yeah. But and then the other thing is about possibly not getting a diagnosis if you try and switch doctors. I've heard that if I, as a private patient, would try to switch over to this new clinic that they're, national strategies that they're setting up for ADHD in adults, that I'd have to be re-diagnosed by the public team, and that that they may not diagnose me again. Now, in theory, if your symptoms are there, and it depends on what tools they're using. Mine was all very psychological and like standardized, and I'm assuming it will be the same there, and they have psychologists on the team and stuff like that. But if any ounce of subjectivity on the part of the person assessing you could throw your diagnosis off, even if you have symptoms. So it's terrifying. It's very anxiety inducing.
I want to go slightly off topic, and you're entirely right about the anxiety inducing. By the way, there's a lot of anxiety surrounding diagnosis, surrounding having ADHD. There's definitely a huge mental health impact on people with it, especially with the ignorance of society as well. But something that you guys were talking about sparked something in my head there. Thomas, you were mentioning you have kids that are in school as well, and they were saying about don't expect a call back. That just stood to me because one of the very first things that they recognized in me as a young girl was that I could have this, but all of my teachers, everyone that was to give a letter to the child psychologist to say she may or may not have ADHD, I feel like as a girl, they were so reluctant to say I had it. This kind of ties into the stigma, I think, because the view of ADHD in children is always a young boy, always hyperactive, always talking in class, but no one was noticing that I was flunking. No one was noticing I couldn't sit in class and, take notes. It was too blurry for me all the time. And I wasn't necessarily hyperactive, but it's so much easier picked up in boys than girls. And then when they did eventually mention to me, the child psychologist kind of picked it up in herself. There was also the stigma lying there for me of that and of the young boy, and also just of the disorder as a whole being such a negative thing to be associated with. Like the kids in school who had the ADHD diagnosis, I don't know if it was where I am that people can be stuck up, but they were stigmatized, they were bullied, they were called weird for having this. So I will admit I didn't want to be associated with it when I was 18. And it's sad to say, because I was maybe 17, 18 actually, because you have to leave that psychologist once you turn into an adult. But not only was I not diagnosed soon enough, I was diagnosed at a point in my life where I didn't want to be associated with the diagnosis because of the way people talked about it. And if they had given it to me when I was younger, maybe I could have got the help. And then once you become an adult, it's so much more difficult to get that. Like you were saying, Joy, as well, if you switch psychologists or if you go to the wrong place, maybe they won't re-diagnose you. And that, once we have a diagnosis, we have a lifeline. And then it's quite scary to think that either we could have never got recognized as women or as young girls, or we could just be uprooted in our diagnosis because maybe a bit of sexism, also just psychologists and the way they think. So I know that's a bit hectic what I said, but it's about the stigma, I guess, in taking everything you guys said. It just kind of sparked that in my head about school and young school children.
I was seen by child psychologists for maybe a year or two. I can't remember. I was in primary school, so I wouldn't go to school. It was never, ever brought up. I could have something. They just didn't know why I couldn't, looking back now, just go to school and focus. So, like, but it was never even mentioned.
Yeah, this leads back to what I said earlier, that it's largely connected to ignorance. Not just the public, not just the average people who has no clue about ADHD, they just have a stereotypical picture in their head. But at the same time, the medical community as well, which is a much more bigger problem, because if you cannot believe your doctors in a medical question, that's sad. That's just sad.
And sometimes we know ourselves better. And personally, I know I was screaming out for help, obviously not literally, but in every way I could as a child and as a young adult, maybe even as a older adult up to until 20 before I got my diagnosis. I was basically a walking epitome of needing the help that I have now. And no one seemed to pick up on it. None of the professionals I saw, I was in counselling and under psychiatric treatment since I was a young adolescent. And if they picked up on it, they weren't willing to get me the help I need. Now, I'm not sure if stimulants can be given always, well, lisdexamphetamine anyway, to people of not a certain age. Forgive me if I'm ignorant on that. But I was only given them once I turned 20, so I don't know if that's anything.
I think they can be given younger. Well, I think
from 6 years old.
I could have used it. I know some stimulants can. I just wasn't sure about the one I'm on. But,
yeah.
Maybe it was to do with how long it took me to get a diagnosis. But there's also the fact that even when I got a diagnosis, I wasn't actually told. Like, I had to ask to see the paper, what's wrong with me. First, they thought it was BPD, then they thought it was borderline, or not borderline, bipolar.
At the times I've said to my doctor, are you sure I just don't have bipolar? I'm too moody. And he's like, no, you don't have.
In all fairness, I screamed out for BPD diagnosis, eventually got it, and then they changed it to ADHD, and then they changed it to ADHD and bipolar.
It's very common, I've heard.
But yeah,
the high and low hyperactivity come across as.
Yeah, exactly. They don't say ADHD. They're like, oh, she's a girl. We'll try BPD first. Okay, maybe it's
too emotional. She's got the depression. No, she's got the mania.
Depression, everything. And they didn't notice the flags, like I had the binge eating, I had the hyperactivity in my head. I was telling them I'd be singing one song in my head, and then I'm trying to sleep, and I I heard something on the radio, that's going on. Like, no one copped on. They thought bipolar hallucinations, because I feel like it's because I was a girl.
Girls are usually much better at masking than boys, because boys are externalized their inner life or inner feelings, and girls are internalized, according to many psychiatrists who are dealing with these issues, because this is not unique to ADHD. This is all over the neurodiverse spectrum. So autistic people and all kinds of other girls are very, very good at hiding these traits, because socially it's much more rejected by the peers and the parents and all. If a girl does the same thing as the boys did, bouncing off, the stereotypical picture of the walls, as that many people believe ADHD is. Girls are just cannot be associated with it. That's not compute for many people. So that's why they're saying, she's just a little bit dreamy, and she's having have a lot of fantasies in her head, and she's okay. She's not having any kind of thing like that. This is not even a girl stuff.
You're entirely right there. It's great. Some people recognize it. Like, it's really refreshing to talk to other adults about this sort of thing that maybe are talking from their own experience, because maybe even the medical professionals, the psychiatric professionals, they aren't as informed as us in some ways. And like you were saying, they can often be ignorant about it. And that's sad. And especially people on the autistic spectrum as well. That's, like you said, especially in women and girls, highly underdiagnosed. And neurodivergence in general is just so underdiagnosed for women.
And the other thing is, what we need to mention, I think this ignorance in the medical community is mostly coming from their approach and what they learned in medical school. So this old-fashioned a mentality that we can fix everything with medication. We fix everything with, we are the fixers, and we give you something or patch that thing and it's fixed. Yeah, and it's getting away. That type of mentality is still lingering in Ireland in a lot of places. Yeah. I have to emphasize, I was lucky, very, very lucky in this sense, because I never met these type of doctors' attitudes. But I know a lot of people who did. I heard horrific stories about old-fashioned, how would I say, cures for from babies to all the elderly people.
Ireland is like that, though. The cure or the healer, the holy well.
Outside, we were talking about this earlier, Joy. Fresh air, have a little nap. Grand.
Yeah, I've even heard the story for the baby that the best way to keep them quiet so they don't cry is give some whiskey in.
When I
heard that first, I thought my jaw dropped.
No, it's for the teething. It's not just to keep them quiet. It's if they're teething, that's what it would be for. It's okay if they're teething.
Okay, and I don't want to get into the details.
No, I'm joking. I don't think it's
what I'm saying with this is that these old-fashioned thinking has to be changed by the younger generations who are more accepting for these because if you look at the history of psychiatry, it really started to took off about the late 50s, early 60s. It had great styles since then, but still many people who were trained in those times, they were still said, oh, this new thing, psychology, what is it for, and so on and so forth. And many average people said that, oh, these brain guys who are doing all kinds of stuff to try to explain away, everybody is mentally sick, everybody is having issues. Why do you care about this so much? While there are people who quietly suffer.
Yeah.
Whether it's a mental illness or neurodiversity. And that's the thing, I think, why it needs to change. So
I don't. I hate it. This is one of those things that I feel like I need to say because I'll forget, and then afterwards I'll go, oh, I meant to say that. Talking about neurodivergency and stigma around medication. So Elon Musk has been tweeting about how harmful Adderall is and Wellbutrin, and saying that any of these medications, anytime he's seen anyone take one, they've always been like insanely angry and aggressive, and that
his own experience because he's neurotypical. Just saying.
He has Asperger's, which I thought was on the spectrum, but now I don't know if it is. I actually think it might be reclassified as, or I don't know.
Maybe level 1. It's called.
It is okay. But he doesn't. I mean, I don't think he has ADHD. Maybe he does, looking at his tweets. I mean, he just kind of says what he thinks, a bit like.
Used for the autistic spectrum. So if he, no, exactly. So he doesn't have a leg to stand on. And
no, but sorry, I guess what I mean is there seems to be a crossover between the diagnoses with ASD and ADHD, but I don't think he actually has the diagnosis of ADHD. So yeah, you're right. But yeah, and then he said anybody who's ever had a story about Wellbutrin, which is like a non-stimulant to increase your dopamine, has had some sort of brush with trying to like off themselves.
That's probably the overprescription of it in the United States. Like,
I
mean to say, like,
regarding Elon Musk, he is incredibly forward-thinking. He's really smart, but at the same time, he can say lots of so stupid things that it's unimaginable. So he's a kind of two sides of him, which I admire. Those parts I really can admire, but some things I just listening to him and just said that, oh, go back wherever it came from, you idiot. Yeah, so that's the reaction.
I have to say something as well. It's to do, again, like Joy was saying before I forget, to do what you were saying, Thomas, about outdated methods of treatment. I'm studying psychology at the moment, and the Psychological Association of Ireland has a code of ethics. And one of the big, I think it's number 2 of the 4 codes they have, it discusses making sure that your psychological treatment of people or conversation with any people that you're working with is up to date. not outdated, socially relevant, and that you admit to your deficits in a way. So in terms of the old-fashioned treatment and the way that people are viewed with ADHD now, and the way psychiatrists may be ignorant in a way or old-fashioned in that, it's not right. It doesn't go with the Psychological Association's code of ethics.
One thing what the community is striving for, and another thing what they actually do. So we don't forget that doctors are people too. So I want to be the nicest person. I want to be the cutest person. I want to be the one who knows everything, but I still don't do that. So many times it's just, we are human and fallible, and they don't necessarily follow them.
Yeah, it's just a difficult thing to negate when you're diagnosing people and you're administering medication, or if you're counseling people, you're talking on a subject that should be your forte in a way. It's not that we don't make mistakes, but we should definitely be up to date in our research. We should definitely try to educate ourselves and be less ignorant to the lives of people that we're diagnosing when we might not have the same lived experiences as them.
Yeah,
I'm not saying I'm not saying they are having a free pass on this. What I'm saying is that we cannot expect many people who has, let's say, 40 or 50 years of practice of one way of thinking, get a new study, get a new result, get a new way of thinking, and suddenly he changes. It's not working easily. So that's why I'm saying that younger generations of psychologists are the biggest chance to changing this point of view.
Definitely.
So but psychiatrists won't follow that same code of ethics that you're referring to. Psychologists are very research based. Psychiatrists tend to be more treatment based, so they kind of have to be both. Yeah. They aren't always both.
Having both of them is a bit more beneficial.
Yeah.
Definitely having them on your side can definitely be
one beneficial. Thing I wanted to mention, though, because we really veered off from the medication, but I'd like to put an emphasis on that if anybody's listening and on the fence on this. Medication is not making ADHD stop or go away. It mitigates a lot of problems which we have and helps tremendously, but at the same time, if you think you take the medication and like an antibiotic or anything, your problem goes away, you will be sorely disappointed because it's not working that way. As Joy said, there are bad days and good days with medication as well. It just helps a lot.
And my personality hasn't changed at all, which is one thing I was worried about. Maybe it would have been beneficial, but if it had a bit.
You're perfect. Stop.
That was the concern. I was like, will I be a robot? Will I just be like, no, I'm the same. I'm just slightly less distractible. Some days more or less.
Yeah.
And we can be overdosed as well. And we can have too much dopamine in our head as well. And we becoming the same like the neurotypicals with the normal dose. So it's important to add that we are just people as anybody else, and we can, if I take 2 of my tablets accidentally or anyway, it can cause real trouble with my behavior and can cause all the problems which a neurotypical would suffer from it.
Has anyone ever done that? I've had mornings where I can't remember. I think I've taken it.
I did that accident.
But I don't think I've ever
done it
by mistake.
I would just not take it. I just don't take it if I think I may have already taken it. And I just drink a load of coffee, because not that coffee would make you the same as the stimulant would, but it would help sort of focus. But the thing is, the focus from the medication is good. The focus from caffeine and stuff, which people would also, well, it is a stimulant, but people would class you as being high as if you had 30 coffees or something. It's very different than if you take a stimulant medication. So
and add to that coffee, if you drink a lot, it can cause a lot of harm as well.
Yeah.
Everything in moderation, as they say. If you drink 6 or 7 coffee a day, it's not helping you. It's being harmful.
Yeah, this is the thing. That was another thing that told me I had ADHD. I was constantly looking for things that were causing me to focus, things that were giving me dopamine. I wouldn't do things unless I had an impulsive urge to do it, where my brain was actually engaged. Now
I feel like it's emotional.
helps.
I have to have an emotional investment to a degree.
Yeah, so the medication helps to separate that a bit. You'd find maybe that's what I do. Like, it helps me to shower. I will admit that I found that really hard before medication, and that is in itself is stigmatized more than
sometimes I still do. I don't want to wash my hair.
I literally, like, I'd say the thing about
I don't have this problem, sorry.
We all have different issues with it, but one thing that people need to realize about the medication is maybe it doesn't fix all, like you guys were saying, but what it can do is give you 4 days out of a 7-day week where you can do things. Maybe it gives you 2 days, but maybe without it, you would have had no days. And it doesn't make you have superpowers. It doesn't make you high. It doesn't make you super focused to cram on your tests and everything. That's more recreational use for people that, you know, don't need it. But it does definitely give you maybe more good days and more days where you could almost call yourself normal in maybe for at least half a day, for me anyway, out of the week, you know, and that is something that I'm really grateful for taking the medication.
My wife put it in very astutely, medication made you normal. which is funny in itself, because I didn't feel anything but anything, not in a sense that not my normal self. Because before I took medication, I crystal clearly remember when I took my first Ritalin, I started with that one. And I was almost crying because it was so quiet. I couldn't comprehend that this is when normal people are not doing anything. It was incomprehensible. It was like some miracle for me.
Way of life, you know. I went down to my dad and
said, too? Did you get that instant feeling as well when you're
the first time? Yeah.
I didn't feel it, but all of a sudden I was just at my desk working all for the whole, like
that
like
was
a
the
normal
second
person.
thing, but the very first impact when you start to feel, you took the medicine and said, I don't feel anything either. Oh my goodness,
and
what is
like,
this?
1 hour and a half later, start the day.
And after that, like, very productive. For a week, I was like a robot. Like, don't misunderstand it. It just what I was pushing for weeks, I just sit down and finished within an hour.
Yeah.
When I felt that I went tidy up and I go and didn't forget the list of things I needed to do. And even my wife said, "Did you do this?" Yes. Did you? She always testing me that do I remember everything? And when I was in the 5th or 6th things, she said, "This is working. Yeah,
wow.
This is definitely working because you didn't forget."
Someone said, and I thought it was gorgeous quote was, I can't even remember properly, but it was basically saying ADHD is like wading through thick water and medication is like clearing the water or something like that, clearing the obstacles in your way. I don't know what it was exactly, but it had a drawing, you know, it was an artist who also had ADHD, and the start of it was like someone, you know, wading through, and there was sun ahead, but it was covered by clouds, and then the medication was basically like clearing the waters and the sun was shining just a little bit out. It wasn't like perfect. Your life isn't perfect afterwards, but it's not like you're going through mud. It's not like you're going through constant stress.
Like
someone in an interview described it that when you are with unmedicated ADHD, you are like on the water. Everything is blurry. Everything is messed up. Everything is hard to do. Everything you put 3 times as effort as much. But when you get the medication, it's like you coming up to the surface and said, "Oh, everything is clear." I'm like, "Oh my goodness, I never experienced." And it's easy to move. It's easy to do things.
Easier, a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. It is. It definitely is. I cannot even comprehend how. Like, could I go back to the way it was? Not to mention your control of the emotions. Like, I am quite an impulsive person, and sometimes it's not really a good thing to have. And I put it mildly. Since I take the medication, my emotions are much more controlled. I have this impulse control that, wait, do you really want to do this? No, you don't.
Yeah,
it would be stupid to do that. And suddenly you just step back and say, okay, I'm not doing it. Oh my goodness, I did that. I never did that before. That's the kind of attitude.
Yeah, it's so rewarding. Like, I don't know if you guys have experienced coming to a really hard decision and the noise is gone. Like, it's like, oh, what if this happens? What if this happens? And your impulsive side just wants to act now. It wants to run. It wants to fight or flight. And when you are on the medication for a while, you do notice a steady decline in the act now, act fast, and run. And it's more like the quietness is there, and you're able to see not black and white, but at least two sides. Before it may have been, just one or the other. And it was like, one's the logical side, one's the emotional side. You can only go with one, and most go with the emotional side.
And that's where the relationship problems come in, because you're just being super reactive and scaring away all your friends. Not scaring
It's
away.
not a guarantee, though, to solve everything, because obviously you still have impulsive moments, or still have the fight and flight moments and the overwhelm and so on and so forth. But
this is what I was saying.
It's like you have that every 10 times. It's like 10% of the original one. Like a day you get 10 times overwhelmed with something. Mm-hmm. Now you have only once, and it's easier to manage that one even, because you don't have to worry about the 9 other one as well.
It's like that's a stigmatization thing too, in people thinking that ADHD medication fixes everything and it's all positive and it's all dopamine, it's all serotonin, great feelings all the time. Like you said, it's not a fix-all. We're going to have those days.
Mentioning that, coming off the medicine in every evening is not a nice thing to have. You're feeling tired, exhausted. At the same time, maybe it's just me, but when I feel the medicine starting to wear off and I'm coming to my normal self, things are like become cloudy. And me too. Suddenly that Facebook is much more interesting. Suddenly that video I shouldn't watch, I watch it. And things are getting bad, and suddenly I starting to say things which I'm not meant to say. And I realize that every day when I come off, I really need to focus a little bit more, because you literally see the difference between the two stages. Yeah, at least it's for me like that.
I don't feel it. When I first started the meds, when I was titrating and I was on like the lowest dose, I would literally get a crash when it wore off in the middle of the day, and that was horrific. But thankfully now I don't feel it wear off, but I will notice that I'm not focusing on things. And I realized that I probably only really text people back during the day now when it's in effect.
I leave it at night now because I don't want to say something, commit to something, agree to something, because
I can't even engage enough. No. Until it seems the next, and then if I'm tired later and I go, oh, wait, did I do this? Did I meet someone? I'm like, oh my God, like I have no energy. My focus is gone now.
Keep a day off at the weekends. Usually it's Sunday. That day I'm falling apart. I'm literally falling apart. I'm lazy, quote unquote. And I can't do anything, and I just, I should do this, I should do that. No, the phone is more interesting,
I take it 7 days a week now. I tried a couple of times, just was like, I probably don't need it today. Horrific. And I don't know if either of you guys drive, but I don't know. I passed my driving test before I was diagnosed, and I cannot believe the difference in me on medication versus off. I am so much more of a safe driver. If I'm driving on the weekends, there's no way I'm not taking my medication.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, by the way, about the not taking it. The best time to not take it, if you're going to take a day off, don't take it with alcohol. So just for anyone listening, it is not safe to take, I know, stimulants with a decent amount of alcohol. So if you're not going out that night, no Listex.
I have never altered my meds ever to do with drinking. And I know that other people have brought this up, and I've never ever altered it. But I've also, and that this is like maybe, I don't know if I should say, but I feel like it makes me feel less hungover if I...
Yeah, it does in the morning, but I always wait. I used to when I didn't care about myself, I used to take it in the morning to get rid of the hangover. But now if I feel there's alcohol left in my system, I don't do that. Anyway, we're going to cut that part. But
yeah, I was thinking
but I wanted to mention one thing, the crash and the up that you may feel when you consider you're on too high a dose. If you guys ever need to go up a dose at all and you feel it may be beneficial to go back up or maybe even come back down, the crash goes away if you exercise. So in the morning, if you exercise heavily for even 5-10 minutes, it doesn't make you as awake. It slowly builds up and it builds up through the day. Protein helps too. And then the exercising and yoga at night, and then no vitamin C, no orange juice, that sort of thing. So I know it doesn't really tie into stigma, but it does in a way, because people assume it makes you so high, it makes you this and that. But if you do your regular daily exercise, if you do eat properly, it just makes you into a normal person.
It does. Like that, there is absolutely every argument that healthy lifestyle
you say that,
as well. But I don't think it's good enough on its own.
No,
I still need my medication.
Diet, exercise, medication if you need it, and I'm a big advocate for counselling. Thomas was going to say something.
Yeah. Just wanted to say that it's funny you say that it's among the ADHD, it's well known that there are so-called long-lasting medication. What I noticed that the tablets I took at first was just a short dose one. And it literally, how would I describe? First there's a big rush. Yeah. Then that rush is normalizing. And I am on that level, and it's weaning off slowly but surely. While in the slow dose, what I noticed, you don't even notice that you're going into there's no rush. And there's no done on that much. So it just goes steadily along. So you don't feel like suddenly you become Superman. This is a myth about the thing. Maybe for a neurotypical, I don't know, because I've never been that one. But for me, when I took the first one, of the one which I take now, a long-lasting one, which is lasting about 8 to 12 hours, I constantly expected the rush, which I got it from the other ones. Nothing like that happened. You don't notice the medication at all. You just suddenly feel that, oh, I can do this without distracted. I can do that without distracted. You know that's when the effect is on.
It's the right one, I think, really, or the right dosage at least. Like you just feel able, like some days anyway.
When I said that it was crashed and I came off from the medication, that's what I meant to. It didn't physically felt anything. Yeah, it's not like you have this rush in your head or anything like that. It's more of I can do things I wasn't able to do beforehand.
Yeah.
And now I can do them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When I physically did get like a crash when I first started, but I wasn't on the right dose. Now I'm on like the long release. Well, it was long release at the time as well, but it basically got metabolized like too quickly. And then I'd physically feel like I just had a sugar crash, but worse. Yeah. But the other thing is, we've all mentioned that we've come down a dose, like either by our own kind of suggestion or through a discussion with our doctors. So, I mean, that in itself, I know there's only 3 of us, but in terms of the attitudes of it being addictive, like half the time we don't even remember. I don't even remember if I've taken it some days, so I don't.
And this is the thing, we're 3 people that met for a podcast. We didn't have any reason other than ADHD Ireland to meet, and we were never associated with each other before. So yes, it's just 3 of us, but it's 3 people from the Irish population from various places that didn't know each other beforehand, didn't talk about diagnosis before, that aren't addicted, that need it to help them, and also that either changed medication or came down on medication because it's not addictive. It's not addictive in the sense that it would be for a neurotypical person. It's actually just mediating our emotions, mediating our energy levels, in a sense anyway, emotional energy levels more so. But it doesn't show, I can't say it proves, but it shows in a way that it's just not the way people perceive it. The stigma is wrong about it just being addictive, and we just use it for happiness. We just use it to be high. We forget to take it. We change our dose to lower. We talk about it in a way that's beneficial to us, not something that makes us hyperactive and high.
Yeah, I have a review
So much so.
every call with my psychiatrist once a month. We do a med review.
Yeah.
So much so that I know I was addicted to coffee. I know I was for a while addicted to alcohol. I knew that I drank too much. I knew that I drank too much coffee.
Mm-hmm. I was the
Here,
same.
I never feel the same way. And it's funny to mention that you said don't drink alcohol with medication. I recommend not drinking coffee. So I totally got off from coffee since I take the medication. I don't need that. And that proves that I actually self-medicated with coffee, a huge amount of coffee. There was a time when I was actually drunk so much that it hurt me, physically speaking.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I knew it was too much. Now I take in the medication, no coffee whatsoever, and I don't feel I'm addicted to anything.
I
put it down and not taking it if it's not needed. And when it was too much, I instantly said that this is too much. I don't want this.
Yeah.
So this is against the stigma that we want to get high, because if I want to get high, I go in for proper alcohol or proper drugs.
I quit drinking. Like, I used to day drink, I used to night drink, I used to drink so much alcohol. It was ridiculous that they told me I was an alcoholic. Now they've taken back their statement.
Because you were just looking for dopamine, and that was given to you.
Coffee the same.
I still love coffee though.
Drinking average 7 coffees, and on the top of that, and the high, I remember I drank 16 or 17 coffees a day.
Oh, wow.
It was actually harming me. I knew that, but I still did it because I needed the dopamine. I didn't know why, because at the time I wasn't diagnosed. But as soon as I took my first medication, coffee down, and I never even felt the need to drink one. Maybe for the taste, but when it wasn't an off day, when I didn't take medicine, drank coffee, I actually couldn't drink it because I didn't need it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I used to be a big coffee, big alcohol, big food. So it was just anything to feel something. And I feel like that comes into the emotional regulation piece. There was such highs and lows. They couldn't figure out what was mentally my issue. They couldn't figure out what was physically my issue. And I went through eating disorder therapy. I went to AA. You know, like I did all these things. I did CBT. I did various different types of addiction counseling. The only thing I do now is smoke, but it's not drugs. So I just smoke cigarettes. But it's funny that before medication, you do seek dopamine. You do want to get high in a sense in any way that you can. Coffee, drugs, drink, food, anything that gives you that feeling of a rush, sugar rush, dopamine, anything.
Procrastination still is probably our biggest vice combined, I'd say.
And no wonder that many ADHD become substance abuser.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I readily admit that I tried everything under the sun, with the sole exception of heroin. Because that's a very, very dangerous world. I was not stupid enough to do that. But at the same time, I tried everything else, and I knew what I was doing, and I knew that this is not right with me.
Yeah,
it's not. I didn't think it was a normal thing to do. I wanted to try it out, know what it feels like, and when you are high, you are really high, and not necessarily good. For example, cannabis was never go well with me.
I can't do that.
I can't.
I think it's an ADHD thing.
Yeah, so I've been kind of lucky that I've never really been that kind of risky when it comes to, like, I like a few glasses of wine. I like to order takeaway, and I have maybe a couple of cups of coffee a day, but half the time I forget about them. So I don't think, and both my parents are alcoholics, like covering like 20 years dry each. So I'm very, very lucky that I don't have that kind of aspects. It's really interesting. And I started that sentence with a reason, and I've forgotten now why I started the sentence.
I love it. I think you were saying you're not seeking out the dopamine in your daily life in other ways. You forget about the coffee. You're not drinking the wine.
Was there something before that?
I think you were just saying about the medication, but I'm not sure.
I've forgotten now. Oh, see, because now it's almost 8 p.m, so it's worn off.
Oh, stop! I know, same. Except now the likes, I take one halfway during the day, and that's my savior.
Oh, see, mine's long release, so it's like morning, and then that's the look.
Yeah, but this is telling me a very interesting story that all of three of us here at
it was the cannabis thing. I've tried that a couple of times, and again, I don't really like it, and it's made me feel weird. So maybe it's an ADHD thing.
We forgot about the drugs. We're not drug heads. We've got Thomas. Go on.
Yeah. So sorry, just it's very interesting. We are three people with a very different environment, and we went through the same problems and the same self-medication processes.
Didn't know each other.
We cannot be just drug seekers who want to get high on amphetamine or methamphetamine. So this is showing again a pattern, and if you look at the modernist society, especially Irish society in a sense, because we know the drunk Irish stereotype, people are drinking alcohol and nobody says that it's dangerous to society for some reason. They smoking a lot. Nobody says that it's dangerous for society.
Yeah.
They even drinking lots of stimulants in the form of coffee. You cannot even imagine how much coffee is going down the people's throats, and nobody's starting to give out that they are getting high on coffee with stimulants. For some reason, we get some medicines which has a bad rep in the US. Suddenly, everybody is on your throat that you take in these very dangerous drugs.
Yeah,
and this is what I find ridiculous and hypocritical many times, and I meet with criticisms.
Because everyone has their thing, and they assume we're the ones with the addiction. We just need the help with our brain chemicals, but everyone else that we may know, everyone has something they're addicted to, so they can't say anything. But also, they're assuming that this is our addiction when it's just not. Yes. Other things may have been our addiction before we got medication, and now we're recovering from them.
Because it wasn't even like, it's all about why do people seek to use drugs in the first place? Is it a biological thing? Is it psychological? Like, it's all very varied. But for us, it's definitely a biological aspect.
Yeah, they're taking drugs as well. Show me in Ireland anybody who haven't drunk a wine or a whiskey or anything like that. It's just ridiculous that those drugs are somehow okay, and it's totally okay that you can freely go and get wasted every weekend. Nobody will judge you for that. But if I take a doctor prescribed medicine every day for controlling my life, I am a drug addict. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, no, you're so right. You can go buy a cart of alcohol once you turn 18. You have a free pass to that. You have a free pass to sleep with whoever you want. You have a free pass to order as many takeaways as you want. You have a free pass to go out with your friends. People are like, oh, that's party drugs. That's this and that. To cocaine, to everything that you can take that's not heroin. Again, people who have mental illness.
Heroin. You can also buy heroin if you want.
You can. You shouldn't.
You probably shouldn't.
No, definitely not.
But like, we're the ones stigmatized for this. And we're stigmatized by the very people that are ignorant and do it themselves to things that are actually addictive. And it's just ignorance. Like, is the best word.
Ignorance. We go back to ignorance all the time about this.
Yeah, this is the thing. Stigmatization of an actual recognized disorder is ignorance.
I think it's the same with all psychiatric drugs, like even antidepressants I've had like years ago, and before I had my diagnosis, for either anxiety or low mood, because they're big comorbidities for people with ADHD. Saying something like being on a really simple like SSRI, and either a GP, like not my usual one, but somebody else or somebody I worked with being like, oh, well, you don't want to be on them forever. And it's just like, but it's okay if it's a real disease for some people, if it's like
until they need it,
or cardiovascular disease or something like that. It's okay to take a pill for that. But then you have the added weight of being like a controlled substance and the extra stigma on that. So it is.
Even from my pharmacists, I've got some bad looks. I know you were saying, Thomas,
Oh,
that
look, even my pharmacy as well. Yeah, they're so nice.
it's so bad. They're like, you've been coming here for years for antidepressants, and now you're on a controlled substance. And I'm like, nah, like you're not a psychiatrist.
You should come to my pharmacist. I can let you know.
Oh, yeah,
My mom was so accommodating and so nice, totally accepting. I really loved the attitude. I was worried, but he was fine.
Mine set me up on the drug payment scheme. She goes, "Oh, these are very expensive. I've put in an application for you, so you just need to like."
Medication helps us to get a job that we can work at nearly full time, and then because we're on medication and we can work nearly full time, they're like, you don't need disability allowance, and it's like, or you don't need the free travel, you don't need this and that, you don't need to be recognized as having a disability. And not everyone wants to be. I completely understand that, but
I do.
I need
give me all the help I can get, please.
I'm like literally. I know I live with my fiance, but like I'm single, basically working part time. And because it's ADHD and not something else, my disability allowance is reduced by €150. And that is such a stigmatization, because my fiance's family, there's 5 children that his mother has, and 4 of them are on the autistic spectrum, and they get recognized more as having a disability. And I know not everyone wants to be associated, but it's just showing that ADHD is not considered serious enough. And for a lot of us, it's debilitating enough for us to not work full time, for us to not be able to get on transport. Maybe we have anxiety, mental health issues coexisting, and
or just genuinely being unable to make X amount of steps to get something done. Like that's a big barrier to me from just like cooking as normal. I get overwhelmed and I can't.
Yeah, so just going away from our experiences, don't forget that us with autism, ADHD is a spectrum too.
Of course.
And there are some people who are actually crippled because they don't have access to medication. And basically their life is a living hell because they are struggling every day with the very basic tasks. We are in this sense lucky. We can't get access to medication. We have not this serious situation we are somewhere in the middle of the range. But what about those people who are living somewhere in the other side of the country, like Galway or Mayo, in a rural area where they don't have any access to these possible solutions we have? And they are crippled by their serious, severe ADHD, and they cannot do anything done. They always late, they forget things, and their life is a living hell because of this. And their life would be improved significantly just to take the medication itself. Not talking about anything else, just taking the medication.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say to end what I was saying as well. That came out very wrong, because what I was trying to say was, before I got diagnosed, I was trying to get disability. And when I got diagnosed, because I wasn't able to get out of bed for months, I was so debilitated by this because I wasn't diagnosed, and I also have coexisting mental health disorders. And it was more that once I even did get the diagnosis, first I was on disability for mental health issues. And then when I got the diagnosis of ADHD, before I was on the medication, I wasn't living on enough money from my job because I got fired from several and I couldn't get out of bed to go. So it was more so that they weren't helping me financially or recognizing it as a serious disorder that was debilitating me before I was medicated. And you're completely right. There's so many people suffering that can't get access to medication. Maybe they don't even know,
or diagnosis.
That's not the worst. They think themselves as a bad person. They think themselves that it's all them while they're having this issue.
And that's again society.
We've all been there. I'd say every one of us have been there, going like, "What is wrong with me? Why can't I just function like other people?" Like literally, what is wrong with me feeling.
There needs to be more education, because it's so awful to think that there's so many people in the world that don't know what's wrong with them, that think that they just can't keep up with things, that they're lazy, that they're making excuses for themselves. That was my favorite thing to say to myself, like, oh, you're sitting on the couch for 3 days and you feel really down. You're not depressed. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not this way. You're just lazy. And I don't want anyone else to feel like that. And not that medication works for every person, and not that psychiatric help is available to every person, but maybe as a society, once we get more accustomed to knowing about disorders, to knowing about ADHD, try to destigmatize it in whatever way we can. There might be more access for people. Maybe eventually it'll be cheaper. Eventually it'll be more accessible, and people can get the help they need in that way.
There's definitely a shift, like within the HSE. They are starting to address it, especially in adults. So that's a start.
Can I bring up one last thing before we wrap up, because we didn't really talk about that, which is
needed to plug it in. Go on.
medicating children, because this can cause a huge controversy as well. Regarding that, I have to tell that I talked with my daughter who's 14, and she was really, really reluctant to take any medication for that at first. And it's not necessarily mean convince your child to take it. So the thing is that when I was talking with her, I realized that many children don't even want to take medication while they knowing that they have serious issues in their lives. But at the same time, this is a two-way street. So sometimes the parent pushing it to make her or their life easier. Sometimes the child want it for some reason because their life is a living hell. They want to fix it. Yeah. So regarding children, I am a bit on the fence on this one, to be honest, because, for example, my 8-year-old son, I don't even think about giving him medication up until he's large enough or big enough to decide does he want it or not. Because we know it's easy to talk about it because it's our decision, our body. But children are a different topic in this sense.
As parents, I'm not a parent, but as parents, I probably don't have the education on being a parent, but I feel like up until a certain age, before the child can say what they feel, what they want, what would benefit them, that pushing medication on your kids or making them take it without knowing might be a bit irresponsible. Maybe it is very difficult for parents to manage, but the child is more important that's what I would think. So like, as much as I think medication is beneficial, I understand what you're saying about your 8-year-old. You wouldn't even consider it at the moment, because maybe that's personal to you, but I do feel like at that age I wouldn't have been able to say what was best for me. I wouldn't have been able to articulate what was best for me, and it might be up to the parents to manage it until a certain age.
Yeah, the problem is that I addressed that, and I mentioned that because, again, back to where the source of the problem is. In America, many parent, just to make their own life more comfortable and more easy, they pushing the medication on their children. It's easier to popping a Ritalin for the kid and cool down and leave me alone than I should.
The whiskey on the gums thing.
Yeah, I should handle it. So this is why I'm saying it, that I'm on the fence a little bit, because many people who has a child with ADHD, they are seriously thinking through this. And if they are thinking that we are promoting that it should be given the children, it's absolutely not the case.
No.
If you're an adult, by all means, it's your body, it's your choice. You do whatever you want with your body. Mm-hmm. But when we're talking about children, you never push it on the child unless they agree to that. That's my opinion in this.
Yeah, me too. At some point during this, I wanted to mention that, one, in no way are we pill pushing. Two, if any parents are listening of kids that have ADHD or they may consider that they have ADHD, again, we're not pill pushing. It's personal experiences. And I mentioned it at the start, but I wanted to reiterate it exactly like you said, that we're talking from lived experiences as adults with ADHD. At no point did we say we wish we were medicated as children. And at no point did we say that people should be medicated as children or being forced to take medication as adults, even if they don't agree with it, they can't articulate what they want. In my opinion, you should be a grown person, at least to a certain extent, to be able to articulate what's best for you, what feels good, what benefits you at school, at any age. So yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly there, that we're not advocating, we're not sponsored, we're not anything like that to talk about different medications. It's just our experiences as grown adults.
And we're not saying that children should take the medication as well.
That's what I mean. Yeah, we're not saying yes or no. We're just talking about our experiences.
And it's a very important addition, which I would like to say, that there are plenty of ways to treat ADHD without medication.
A lot of people choose not to take stimulants at all. I mean,
there are medications actually which are not stimulant based at all.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
and
people... on the top of that, there are a lot of things like cognitive therapy or counseling or schedules and all kinds of other way to control the ADHD.
Along with counseling, there is different ways, like you're saying.
Before I was diagnosed, I had gone down the therapy route. So, like, for me, medication is a big part.
Changes in the weather affect, like, different things.
Oh my God, the weather, vitamin D. Psychiatrist is like, vitamin D, I start taking fish oil, and magnesium.
Fish oil for the
magnesium is really good. I concur. Magnesium is working really, really well.
Yeah,
I like it a lot.
With medication.
And I'm a proper, like, I have a degree in physiology. I work in clinical trials. Like, I am very pro if there's evidence that you're worth taking. So I'm not really a supplement person. But since my doctor told me to take vitamin D, especially in the darker days of the year, other supplements.
Oh, vitamins always.
I'm like the magnesium, the calcium, and the fish oil. I've never been a supplement person, but I'm like, okay.
Yeah, no, entirely. I'm the same. I got them for my fiance because he's undiagnosed.
Regarding the supplements, returning back to magnesium, I even noticed that a huge difference between magnesium oxide and magnesium citrate. Because the magnesium citrate is dissolving faster. It mitigates most of the side effects of the medication.
Wow.
So it's really, really effective. If you have some medication side effect, it removes a lot of side effects from stimulants.
Wow, that's great.
Like the grinding, like the anxiety, like
the grinding.
Extra boost.
Is that an ADHD thing? The jaw grinding?
Yeah.
The grinding is the medication. That's medication.
I've had it since before I was on medication.
I'm not sure about that then, but the medication causing grinding. I never did that before, and so when I took it, and at first it's not that serious for me to worry about it, because it can be very serious. But as soon as I started to take magnesium, especially citrate, it's gone. It's not even live. I don't
Thank
even.
You so much. That's unreal. I really appreciate that. The more you know.
Magnesium citrate, it's much harder to get it. Most of the off-the-shelf ones are usually oxide, which is as good as the other one, but it's much slower dissolving and not as effective, therefore. But if you take citrate, it's really, really effective. So I highly recommend everyone who takes medication and has issues with the grinding or the anxiety or what else are there? If you cannot sleep.
Yeah, insomnia can be one, yeah.
My insomnia was worse beforehand, I think, than it is now.
Yeah, because sometimes the crash can also help with the sleeping. But this is the thing, if there's side effects, just to bring it back to the stigma, like there's negative side effects that a lot of us experience. So it's not just a happy drug. It's not all just fix all. There's definitely benefits and there's definitely issues with it. But in the long run, it does definitely significantly improve our day-to-day tasks and life.
Yeah, and there's actually evidence that stimulants can decrease insomnia in both ADHD because it quietens down the mental chatter enough for people to actually be able to fall asleep.
Yeah, I noticed that as well, that my sleeping pattern is really disrupted overnight, every night. Mm. But medication didn't affect my sleep at all. I am maybe the exception, but compared to what generally people believe that you take this and you cannot sleep all night, the only time I was unable to sleep when I overdosed myself accidentally. I was up until 5 o'clock in the morning and I barely able to sleep. And next day, I went through the whole day without even feeling that I haven't slept. And that was because I accidentally took 2 pills.
Oh man, I've never done that.
I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah, by the way, to dispel a common myth, your heart rate and your pulse and your blood pressure is slightly elevated, but it's less than a cup of coffee.
Yes, it's slightly.
So it's really important to say it's not like you get
if it's normal. Yeah,
you're hearing your heart rate in your ears, and you're feeling like your heart is bursting. It's nothing like that. It's basically if you drink 2 cups of coffee, your heart rate is getting higher than when you take the medication. That's why it's not recommended to drink coffee while you're on the medication.
Exactly.
We can do that. Some people does it, probably, but
I do. But again, I'll have like one. Maybe I'll make a second one, and then I will literally forget that I made it, and I'll find it like 2 hours later.
Energy so much. But I was going to say alcohol and coffee, like you said about coffee, are significantly higher risk at heightening your heart rate. And also doctors usually, I don't know about you guys, but when prescribing a stimulant, they do your vitals, and that's usually the way it goes. And also having a high heart rate is way less significantly worrying than people assume it is. And like you said, again, caffeine, alcohol, all that sort of thing is way more elevating your heart rate than a stimulant does.
So this is the difference. So that's why I'm saying that you need to dispel this myth that it's bursting your heart.
Yeah. I had kind of and I don't even know if it's due to stimulants, but I had a period where I did have a bit of quite high blood pressure, but I have no history of it, and it's completely fine again.
Yeah, stress can do that as well. I hate
Lucky you.
Yeah, but I mean, it could have nothing to do with the stimulants. I happen to also just say, I'm not sure if I need to be on this dose. I don't think I feel a huge benefit from the previous dose.
It's definitely not just a heart rate elevating, anxiety producing, stress inducing drug,
Silver bullet either. Like, it's very specific to each person as well.
When I was prepared to this podcast, I read a couple of articles about the stigma, especially amphetamine and methylphenidate. And there was an article which is really stuck with me, where the guy said that they checked the amphetamine dose in a street drug, what they got it from an illegal source, and the prescribed drug. And it said that here is the result. 1 tablet, what you can buy in a disco or any kind of nightclub, was equal to 5 of the tablets of the highest dose what you can get from methylphenidate.
Yeah,
I was specifically that's why it stuck with me, because I take methylphenidate, and I said if I would take that 5 tablets, I would be high too.
Yeah,
I would fly away like a little kite, but
it's a very small therapeutic dose.
And then it's a very, very small dose compared to what you get on the street. It's 5 tablets. It's huge amount. I think it's about 300 milligrams in a street drug, and which is huge.
Therapeutic dose is definitely the right word for it. We would never experience a feeling like that on our medication. And it's scary to think about, to be honest, because for people that actually take it daily for a good reason, to feel the way we do on our medication and to imagine 5 times the dose, it's just not what we're doing. And it's quite worrying to think about. So it's very worrying to think that recreationally people use this kind of amount, this kind of measurement.
It's not even close what we do.
In a way. But that's the thing, that's where people hear about Ritalin, that's where people hear about Adderall is people abusing it, and then they just assume that everyone doesn't need, they don't know about dosage, like I mentioned earlier. They just see a pill for a pill, and they just assume it's the same one that people take at nightclubs to get high, and it's just not. Does anyone else have anything to add before I wrap up today?
About what, sorry?
How did you feel about the conversation today? Did you benefit from it? Did you find it interesting? Was it nice to hear other perspectives?
I feel like we're all on a very similar page. I know we all use stimulants daily, so I mean, it seems like we would be. So I suppose it's easy in that sense. Don't feel like you're arguing like with the wall with somebody who maybe, has the opposite view. So it's very open, which is nice. But so yeah, I mean, it is nice. I think I'm lucky. I haven't had too much negativity, but I've only been on it for about 13 months. So
yeah.
What I generally take away from this, so that who takes it and generally do have ADHD. So we're not talking about abuse or pretense or anything like that. It shows that, first and foremost, we're not drug abusers. When you take these medicines, you're not drug abuser. The second thing is that it hugely benefits for us in our everyday life. And the third thing, which is it's really, really strict to get it. So if someone wants to get high legally, choose another way, because this is more, you have to do so many hoops. It's not even worth it. And that's what I'm saying.
Expires if you don't bring it in quick enough. Like if you don't pick up the medication quick enough, it expires.
Too many hoops to do it if you would just want to get high. Generally speaking, I never met an ADHDer who strongly against, or very few I met who strongly against medication. Yeah. Children is a different topic altogether, but we went through that.
I've spoken to a few people with bad experiences when finding people who would like to take part in the podcast. But it was more that their bad experience colored their view of the stimulants in general for other people, and that was what I didn't want today. Speaking with people who do have a view that stimulants don't work, or maybe a more negative view on the topic from personal experiences, could be something that we could do another day. But today was more about learning about the stigma behind the medication that we do take, the medication that has been proven to benefit people, and the medication that us as people living with ADHD, how it benefits us and how people perceive it wrong. That was what today's was about. So I think we definitely covered that, and I really enjoyed talking about that today. Thank you for listening to Let's Chat, ADHD Ireland's first podcast hosted by me, Lauren McBride. You can find us on Instagram at ADHD Ireland, and I'm on there too, at Her Thoughts in Bright Colours. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we'd love to hear your feedback and opinions on the topics covered each week. Sending positive vibes until we chat again.